What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up. That's the process of waking up, isn't it? I mean, as we start to wake up, and it's almost like we come out of our sleep in stages, right? We come out of our sleep and we wake up a little bit, and then we wake up a little bit more, and then we wake up some more, and then something happens, a crisis, a personal crisis in our life. We wake up a lot more from that, and then it just, the awakening continues on and on and on and on and on, I guess, until it doesn't. Well, thank you, Declan. I appreciate your service here. And, I also appreciate all the support you've been giving me. Thank you so much for that.
I was going to say it increases ad infinitum.
It does. There you go. Good, great phrase. Well, look, as I mentioned earlier, we are on step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And we've been looking at the steps through the lens of emotional sobriety and self-esteem. How do the steps create this authentic self-esteem we're talking about? And how does that authentic self-esteem relate to a practice, or developing a practice of emotional sobriety? Well, you've been hearing a discussion that we've had so far on this step 11. I mean, I think it's been incredible, the contributions that Herb made and that Rogers made and Tom made last week on this step. And I hope I can sweeten the pot a little bit tonight as well. I'm a big fan of a psychiatrist that some of you may remember. Some of you may not have been exposed to him, especially if you're young. His name is Dr. David Viscott. And Dr. David Viscott was, a phenomenal radio personality. He went on TV for a period of time, but I don't think his TV program caught on like his radio show. And I just loved his insights and stuff. And unfortunately, his life came to a tragic end. But I was reading, and he's got this little book called Finding Your Strength in Difficult Times, which is so appropriate for me at this point in my life, right? And the crisis that I've been going through. But I wanted to read just something as I introduce this step and what we're going to be looking at with this step. And it's about being patient. But listen to what he says, and I want you to start to think about, how does this relate to step 11? He says, I seek the right road. Finding it, I lose my doubts. So listen to that again. I seek the right road. Finding it, I lose my doubts. Traveling on it, I find my strength. The road is my only goal. I follow where it takes me. Finding it, I lose my doubts. Traveling on it, I find my strength. The road is my only goal. I follow where it takes me. I think that's what step 11 is really doing for us, right? It's helping us stay on the road that we've found as we've been working the steps. And as I've said before, really steps 6 and 7 were those pivot steps, right, towards developing the best possible attitude we can have in step 6 and 7 towards our problems, towards our character defects, what we've come to call in this meeting our character defaults, our ways, our maladaptive adaptations, if you will, to life. But it's went beyond that, because then the next steps had us looking at our best possible relationships with other people and how to show up in the best way, our best possible relationship with ourselves. Step 10, also with others. And now it's about staying on this road and continuing to understand what it means. Now, you've heard us talk a lot about that. One of the pillars of a practice of self-esteem is living life consciously. Well, isn't it very interesting? And this step specifically states improving our conscious contact. Improving our conscious contact. Well, this is what Brandon says about consciousness. And I think that this is very important in terms of how it applies to this specific step. He goes, we are free to strive for the expansion or the contraction of our consciousness. We are free to do that. Herb talks about free will. What is free will? Well, one aspect of free will is your relationship to the amount of consciousness that you bring to your life. And there were many times, I bet you in all of our lives, when we contracted our consciousness. We did not want to live consciously. We did not want to be aware of what was going on around us and what we were doing. I call it selective inattention, right? There's things we did not want to pay attention to, because it didn't fit with who we thought we were, or who this image we had of ourselves, which was so distorted, was. And then he goes on to say, is that self-esteem is a function of how we use our consciousness. Now take that in for a minute. How do you use your consciousness? Do you use your consciousness to challenge yourself when you're upset? Do you pause for a minute and try to get in touch with what might be what's off with me in this situation that's disturbing me? Do you check yourself to see the spot check inventory that we learned in step 10? That am I having some kind of an unreasonable expectation, some unenforceable rule that I'm applying, that I'm putting on someone or putting on this situation, and that's what's disturbing me? Are you using your consciousness to continue to develop this emotional sobriety in your life? He goes on to say this, and Herb, you're going to really love this. And I love how he stated this, because we say it in a different way, but I think Brandon says it in another way that makes the point, is that the honesty of our relationship to reality and the level of our personal integrity has to do with our self-esteem. The honesty of our relationship to reality. We talk about alignment to reality. We talk about learning to deal with what is, that reality is only reality, as Herb quotes, right? Only 100% of the time. But what is our honest relationship to reality? What would that look like? Well, an honest relationship to reality would mean is being able to embrace it as it is and what it means for us, and not avoiding the suffering that comes when that reality is a terrible disappointment. Is to embrace that disappointment and that suffering, because it is a part of what our human experience is. Our life is going to be filled with disappointments, and hopefully it's going to be filled with joy as well, and wonder and amazement and all kinds of other things. But we want the stuff that feels good. Don't give me that disappointment, please. Let someone else suffer that. I don't want it. And yet, how can we be alive? How can we fully experience our life if we are going to pick and choose what's okay? Instead of having an open heart to embrace whatever challenges life is setting before us. Whatever challenges we're creating ourselves through our self-defeating behaviors, or through our ignorance, through our naivete, through whatever is going on. We talk about taking 100% for the existence we've created. Well, that doesn't mean that you're responsible for everything that happens to you. Sometimes things happen to you that you're powerless over, but what you are responsible for is how do you deal with that? What kind of consciousness do you bring to that situation? How do you digest that situation so that you grow from it, that you use your experience? This is all about the decision we make in terms of how much consciousness we're going to bring to our life. It is not for the weak of heart. Trust me, it is not. You know, if you guys were a fly on the wall, you'd see the suffering I've been going through, and some of my close friends here know about it because they get calls and I've been crying on their shoulders and raging with them and all the other things I've needed to do. And thank God you guys have been there for me. I have a deep gratitude for the fellowship I have here. And with all of you as well. Many of you have reached out to me and I appreciate that very much. But this step is speaking to me so strongly at this point in time. And sometimes bringing our consciousness to it just means being able to just fully experience what's happening and to let ourselves flow with it. But I love, and I'm going to conclude what I say with reading this once again to you. I seek the right road. That's what step 11 is about, is continuing to stay and seek that road. In finding it, I lose my doubts. Doesn't mean that I won't have any doubts, but that by being on the road, I will eventually lose my doubts because it is right for me. We get the question all the time, how do you know God's will? Well, you know God's will by what your experience is. Somebody says, well, if I'm in this pain, is that God's will? Yeah, maybe it is for you right now. Maybe that's what you need to do. There's this wonderful, wonderful prayer, or not prayer, but poem that was written by Rumi. And I'm going to pull it up real quick and read it to you guys because it's so relevant, I think, in so many ways to some of our experience. It's called The Chickpea and the Cook. By Rumi. Let me see here. There it is. Let me read this to you really quickly because it's so wonderful. Here. Hold on 1 second. There it is. All right, here we go. So listen to this. I just love this. So a chickpea leaps over of the, I'll do it again. A chickpea leaps almost over the rim of the pot where it is being boiled. All right, so you can see the chickpea leaping over the rim of the pot that it's being boiled in, right? The chickpea says to the cook, why are you doing this to me? Why are you boiling me in this water? The cook knocks the chickpea back into the pot with his ladle. And he says, don't you try to jump out. You think I'm torturing you. I'm not torturing you. I'm giving you flavor so that you can mix with the spices and rice and be the lovely vitality of a human being. I'm giving you flavor so you can mix with the spices and the rice and the lovely vitality and be the lovely vitality of a human being. Remember when you drank rain in the garden? That was for this. Isn't that remarkable? It's just such a powerful, powerful poem. I seek the right road. Finding it, I lose my doubts. Traveling on it, I find my strength. The road is my only goal. I follow where it takes me. All right, thank you. Let me invite my colleagues in and let's see what we're going to do with this tonight. The doctor I was reading from is Dr. David Viscott, Viscott. Viscott. That's his name.
We seem to be okay with security, so I'm going to open up chat and
Okay.
in case anybody wants to chat. Anyone else in the group?
Chatting.
Chat.
Okay, let us go ahead and well, you guys are sitting there. What's happening? Where did you get knocked back in the pot with the ladle from the cook?
I'm a chickpea. Help! Help! I don't want to be a human being. Human beings, they're the worst.
I can understand that.
I want to get back to my chickpea family. This seems different than what we usually do.
It is. You guys are so quiet.
Oh, I guess because we're not spotlighted. I thought we were waiting to go. We're just.
You are spotlighted. You're in the group with me. I see all four of you.
Yeah.
Oh, I just see all of you guys. Let's see. Maybe that's my thing.
Yeah, you got to
Hey,
turn it right.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm making a fool of myself. I thought I was just a little square there. I didn't think anybody could see me.
No, you're a big square.
You're a big square.
Ah,
Herb, way to go, Herb. I like that.
walked into that one. Thank you, Herb. Well played.
All right, Roger, kick us off here.
You know what came up for me, Al? I really like that you're focusing on consciousness, and I'm so aware every day of one of the other things Brandon says about consciousness is that consciousness is a choice, right? It's always a choice, which is another way of saying, in another part of the 6 pillars, what you said, that we always have a choice. He says consciousness is volitional, right? It means we can choose to direct the searchlight, as he calls it, of consciousness toward reality, toward the truth of our experience, which is part of reality. Reality is not just about what's going on outside of us, right? In the world or the circumstances or events that we're in. It also very much applies to what's inside of us. And for me, the biggest obstacle that gets in the way of me trying to face and deal with painful realities is exactly that. They're painful. I don't want to, I go into avoidance. I go into denial. I don't want, it's what you said. I don't want to experience the suffering part of life. And what helps me a lot with that is just little by little, first of all, to acknowledge within myself that I'm not at all interested in facing, the pain. Disappointment is the word you use, sadness, loss, grief of life. I also add fear and anxiety to the painful aspects of life, resentment, self-centeredness, all of that. But you've all heard me talk before about how I find it best to begin with acknowledging how much I don't want to go near it, how much I want to resist or deflect or distract. And I do that a fair amount of the time. But it has damaging effects on my self-esteem. As he makes the point so clearly, and I'm so glad you brought it up, our self-esteem is most fundamentally defined by our willingness or unwillingness to use our consciousness to try to get close to God, if you want to use that term, or reality, to use Brandon's terminology. So fundamental to my sense of self-esteem and how good I'm feeling about myself and how much respect I'm feeling and confidence I'm feeling to myself is how willing I am to bring myself to the difficult task of facing painful realities. Some moments and some days I'm more willing than I am others. You notice that word again, willing, right? Willingness. But the more willing I am, the better I feel about myself. So the process usually starts for me with acknowledging how much I don't want to go there. And then little by little, find that if I simply let myself experience the pain I'm in, it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's all the stories I create about the suffering I'm experiencing, all the meanings I give to the suffering I'm experiencing. Those create a lot of the suffering I'm going through. If I can surrender to letting myself cry or to letting myself talk about the pain I'm in with somebody I feel close to and trusting of, it always has the effect of relieving my sense of suffering, of bringing relief. I mentioned to you earlier, Al, I had met with a client today who has had a series of setbacks late in her life. First, it was that she found she wasn't able to drive because of psychological issues that were going on. And then she wasn't able to do her job. And then she had to be, hospitalized for a while to because she wasn't able to get into an assisted living and so on and so forth. But what she's found, and she's not young, she's close to my age. She finally found the willingness, and she's been sober for a long time, but she finally found the willingness to just go with what life and reality were asking her to do. And she is as happy as I've ever known her to be, and is feeling as good about herself as I've ever known her to feel. And she said something great. She said, if I start trying to figure out what I need to do, I lose it. I can't figure it out. If I just surrender to the reality of what life is asking me to do, or even requiring me to do, and I don't fight it, it's not a problem. And I told her, God, you have given me so much spiritual inspiration and information today. I said, it's supposed to be the other way around, right? But today, you're really the one who's giving me so much insight, because I could see the difference that it's making for this newfound emotional sobriety, this newfound willingness to surrender and just follow what reality is asking or demanding of her. So consciousness is a choice. I don't think any of us make that choice always in the direction of trying to face what's hard for us to face or taking contrary action, as we often talk about it. But all I can say is the more often I'm able to face what I prefer not to face, the better I feel about myself.
Well, please tell her for us that she's offered us something tonight too, because that's beautiful. And it's we're human beings. We're forgetting machines. Apparently originally we're chickpeas, but I didn't know that before tonight. But I know we're forgetting machines. And when you said that thing about when she says I try to figure it out, I thought, because I just I'm a process thinker as you are, Roger. It's and I think it's the exact same principle as our glitchy old man memories. You know, when you forget something, especially a name, you know,
Yeah.
you know, somebody that you know very well, or an actor in a show or something, you can't get it. The moment you're trying to get it, you will never get it. You cannot get it while you're looking for it. But if you totally predictably, if you let it go, if you really let it go, you can't fake letting it go. Because I've tried that, you know, okay, I'm no longer thinking about it, you know, it's like, but when you really let it go, it doesn't matter. It may not come for now, it may come later in the day, whatever, but it'll just pop back into your head. It's just, and that's what she's describing, only with something bigger. You know, if we just let go, quit fighting. You know, it's what they tell. I learned this from a guy who was on a whitewater rafting guide. You know, the whole idea of, I never understood go with the flow until I heard this 19-year-old whitewater rafting guide describing if we fell out of the boat, you know, don't try to swim. Don't try to stand up. Don't try to do anything. So it says you have two choices. You can just stretch out and put your feet in front of you, or you can pull your knees up and go butt first. But he said the rapid is going to spit you out on the other side. He says you're going to be bumped and bruised, but it's like, if you try to do anything, you're going to put yourself and others in danger. And it's like, I just love that whole idea. And I think I can make a decent segue into that being step 11, because I made another note that what I've said each time we've talked about step 11 is you know, step 11 is the step of expanded awareness for me. The thing I thought about when you were talking, Alan, was this is the place in our lives where our wisdom self becomes our constant companion, where basically we learn to, you know, just like we've been spending time learning to say no, how to differentiate and disagree with the dysfunctional saboteurs in our heads. We learn all that stuff, but we learn all that stuff so that we know who to ignore. And then we go and we seek out this wisdom voice that is not nearly as loud. It's certainly not pushy. It's not disrespectful. It's only there if we ask for it. And if we do ask for it on a daily basis, it becomes our guide. And that's the part that is, for me, constantly suggesting that, hey, stop trying so hard, stop swimming, you know, just the rapid will spit you out on the other side. That's what I got.
Thanks, guys. My name is Herb and I'm an alcoholic. And right at the beginning, Alan, when you were talking, I've used consistently the word thawing out, because that's my experience. Somebody in one of my workshops used a term that's similar. They call it defrosting, and I really like that. This is and you tonight. I'm really gnawing on the terms that you said. That I think you said it. Consciousness is a choice, and you talked about selective inattention. And then we talked about the willingness that goes along with the consciousness and the choice. And there's some mystery in there as to why are some people willing to be conscious and other people almost in their unwillingness make a choice to be unconscious. And it's so relevant in the whole area of addiction, certainly. The term at step 11, though, goes right back to the centerpiece, I think, of what you talked about was seeking. So this is my constant sort of quest, and Roger talked a little bit about the question. She got the right question, rather than why is like, what can I do? And I've been a big proponent of trying to help people find the right question so that they can kind of open up their minds and open up their hearts to all of that. One of the statements, it wasn't actually a question, that one of my own people that really helped me in the step 11 really helped me break the code, because I was really trying really hard, and many of you have been talking about how hard we try, and then when we kind of relax, and Tom was talking about that. He said, Herb, you're so results oriented. He said, and he didn't know anything about the 12-step process except what I had just mentioned to him about step 1, powerless and finding power. And he said, think this thought: you're as powerless over your spiritual life as you are over alcohol, not having any power at all. You're as powerless over your meditation as you are over alcohol, having no power at all. Sit in the presence of power, humbled by your powerlessness. You're responsible for the effort, and the results are none of your business. It was like a cement coat had dropped off my shoulders, because it gave me permission to just show up. And in fact, he said that there's only 2 mistakes that you can make. You've probably heard me say it before. There's only 2 mistakes that you can make: not show up and leave early. Everything in between is just none of your business. It was like, okay, my job is to seek, my hope is to find, and to be willing to improve my consciousness during this process. So I'll read some stuff, I'll listen to some stuff, I'll try some stuff, I'll practice some stuff. And then he said, if you really want to know if your meditation practice is successful, after 90 days of consistent practice, ask your wife how you're treating her. Then you will know. If you have become a better person, it's highly likely your consciousness practice is improving your humanity. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Herb.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, one of the things you said, Al, I think it was you. It's all a mush now because I heard all 4. You've all been wonderful. But somebody talked about stories. And I wrote down this: the story perpetuates the suffering. That's what I found in the 4th step, especially. The consciousness of getting the right question blows up the story, because I realize it's a delusion and a myth, and I am confronted in a very embarrassing way with the truth of reality.
I wanted to add one more thing to what you were saying, Tom, and it's a subtle distinction and a subtle point, but I hope it's valuable. One can get the idea when we talk about attention and consciousness being volitional and being a choice, that what facing reality means is we have to really dig in and use intense effort and tension and create this high level of focus all the time. But the example you gave is beautiful, because it's not about that. It's about having a state of consciousness, as Brandon also says, that's appropriate to the context that we are in. If I'm laying in a hammock on a Sunday evening, and I'm doing it to relax, that's a very different state of consciousness than if I'm trying, or a different context, and therefore calls for a very different state of consciousness than if I'm trying to figure out some important issue I'm struggling with, or trying to help a client with something that they're struggling with. So sometimes, not only is it about a state of consciousness that's appropriate to context, but sometimes indirect focus is more effective and more reality-based. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients I've worked with say they were working on a problem at work, and they went in and took the shower in the morning, and they weren't thinking about the problem at all, and boom, a solution came into their head. Or they listened to a dream that they had, and a solution came into their head. Or you're trying to remember a name, and the trick is not to consciously think about the effortfulness of remembering the name. Why is that still congruent with everything we're seeing? Because the reality is, the truth is, it's more effective for me in that context to not to try to think of the name. That's still in alignment with reality. So I just wanted to mention that point. Choosing to be conscious can look very different in different situations and different contexts. So thank you for letting me add that.
Well, now I need to add that, my life purpose is to try to apply hammock mentality to everything.
I
And
like
that's why
that,
I'm not,
There's
that's why
another
I'm not a
nutshell.
surgeon.
There's another nutshell. There's another Rutledge nutshell.
That's why I'm not your accountant and I'm not your surgeon. Because that would not work there.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. You know, the first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. You know, we're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.